It is something in our blood. It is something in our song. It is something in our soul that makes Native women strong. American Indian and Alaska Native women are experiencing violence at unheard of rates. Rape, sexual assault, domestic assault, dating violence, and stalking are more common in tribal communities than any other part of the United States. This was not always so. Native women, past and present, know that our lives have not always been filled with violence and despair. We are proud of who we are and where we come from. We want to end the violence. We know that as part of ending violence, we must listen to the grandmothers. We interviewed 5 women and 2 men who are considered elders in their communities. We asked them to share their wisdom about ending violence. As you listen to their stories, think about what role did spirituality have in keeping women safe? Why were women considered sacred? Where did the lessons about safety and sacredness come from? What does it mean to be Native?
We used to have a grandfather that came and lived with us, and he used to tell us stories about the winter, why we should appreciate all the seasons. There was a reason that Tunkashila means the higher power. He gave us these seasons so we should enjoy them and be prepared for them. And so I guess I was raised in a home where there was always preparation and to enjoy and try to be as happy as you can make yourself be. And it was always sharing with other relatives.
What is a Native woman?
The women of our tribe have historically held great status in our tribe. As example, all of the sacred gifts that are passed on through our tribe, down through the generations, are passed down through the women's lineage. It's the grandmas who safeguard those sacred gifts. And they are the grandmas who choose the next generation of sacred carriers of those gifts. And they choose other women, the women of their descendants. So our people have historically held great respect for the women of our families.
I guess the best way to describe it would be how my grandma described it is, it's like we're a temple of God, Tunkashila. You keep yourself sacred that way. You keep your tioshbaya that way. And she said everybody would look at you and say, this is a Lakota woman. The men were taught by elders that they shouldn't abuse females because that's where they came from. If it wasn't for their mothers or the females, they wouldn't be there. And they should always respect women for giving them life.
Over the years, I was introduced to that. I had grandfathers and grandmothers explain everything to us, the do's and don'ts. Things like that the elders tell you stays with you. And they show by example what they're telling you. To be a pipe carrier, it's very hard. You have to really always be humble and always think positive and always have healthy thoughts for all your relatives. And so that's what my mother, taught me and my family.
I think many people in not only Native society, but for sure in the Western society, don't know what I know. And that is that women are stronger than men. They always have been, they always will be. And it's because of the traditional ways that we live. When we pull apart from that, that's what causes the negativity. That's what causes all those things that we perpetrate against women and psych against women and do mental and spiritual things against women because we don't know how good women are, how strong they are, and how we're supposed to treat them. And the further apart we get from our tradition, then we begin to do negative things, abuse and neglect and all kinds of things that we do to women because we don't like ourselves.
Who we are. Striking out against a woman is like striking out against everything we hold sacred. Our life, our future, our customs and beliefs, because our women represent the power which is contained within all of these concepts. By weakening women, we are weakening our people.
We are always told that a marriage is like a team of horses pulling a wagon. And if one pouts or fights, doesn't pull the load, then that wagon's not going to pull smoothly. So we're supposed to work together to pull that load. And if one's not doing its job, that's when they'll call the elders. They'll step in and help them along.
I think the women did decision making, and then a plan was put forth to the men to carry out. I know that my father consulted my mother a lot about things that needed to be done. And when I think about individual people, different families, it seemed like the woman is always the one that made the decision. The decisions were carried out by her husband.
For a Cheyenne to attempt rape could without difficulty be construed as un-Cheyenning himself by his actions.
The practices that I have heard my father talk about was that the men needed to protect their families. When a young boy is starting to grow up, he's taught to respect his sister. Boys were raised to know the worth of young women. A lot of teachings went on between boys and girls as how they're supposed to be.
Violence is not part of our culture. Abusing one another is not part of our culture. Neglecting our elders and our babies is not part of our culture.
A long time ago, everyone understood the most powerful among the genders is the woman. And if you men out there think I'm lying, the next time there's a baby in your family, you have it. Women are strong, way stronger than we are. And yet, because we know this, we want to perpetrate against them. We want to hurt them. We want to bring them down. We don't want them to know how strong and beautiful and healthy they are. Because we're not strong and beautiful and healthy. That's why we put women down. And ask anybody, can I sit at Timina? Do you understand that? That is the truth. And that is the truth not only for the genders in our society, but it's true for everybody.
Women are sacred because no one can do what we do and not just have a baby. So we carry our life inside of us for 9 months and bring forth the baby. It was one of the strong values my mother talked to me about. She wanted me to tell my daughter that this is a very special gift that we have, that we are life givers, we are life bearers. We bring a life into this world, and that men need to respect that. That's what we represent.
It was everybody's responsibility to make sure that little kid was raised right. So they'll say it takes a village to raise a child, and I think that's true with us Indian people. It was not acceptable to be jealous and beat up on the wives. When they did that, any kind of crime that happened years ago before any of us were born or even thought of, before the white man came, the crime that happened, the punishment to anybody that did something real bad was that they kicked them out of the band. They had to kick them out.
Rape, abuse, all those were unheard of until recently. Respect was always held really, really high for our women then. And we were taught that it was a woman that brought the pipe, and it's a woman that gives birth to children. And it's the women that take care of the children at home while the men are out hunting or they're not always there. And it's the women that hold the family together. It's like a foundation of a building. And to mistreat a woman is like a sacrilege then, years ago. And men were taught, they were raised very strict, because they were taught that they pray with their mouth. Words come out of their mouth, their prayers, and their hands. They should watch what they do with their hands because they hold the pipe with their hands. And all these, the rape, the abuse, it was just unheard of then.
So from that perspective then, we find there are some, stories and about how traditionally in the old days, women really didn't marry within their camp. And so women generally stayed in their tioshbai with our Sioux women, but and the man would move into that family. If there was the potential threat of violence, a woman could just move her husband's things outside, and he would know that he was no longer welcome there, because she also, had male cousins that would do whatever happened to her.
There were very few, if any, crimes against women in traditional times, because truly, if you understand in tradition who is the strongest, you honor them from day one until they die. And women really kind of were the master of the village, and they were the master of the clan too. They're the one that built the leaders and instilled the right knowledge and wisdom. And so if you are in charge of writing the content of your family, you will make sure that in there's a respect for who is doing this. And the women always knew that they don't know to hurt man. Even though they were in charge, they didn't say or do things that would hurt the man. And in that sense, men always respected and honored the women.
The clan mother can remove a chief. If he is guilty of forcing a woman, we don't say rape. The chief is deposed instantly, even without being forewarned.
What has happened to us?
During the last 500 years, Native women have become more and more vulnerable to physical violence. We want to stop the pain. To stop the pain, we must try to find its source.
And it's just shocking the way things are going now. I have worked in a police department. I worked as a social worker. I worked as a teacher. And I worked in the hospital as a cook. And I seen the abuse, females that are brought in. And it just breaks my heart, because this is just not to be. And makes you wonder about the person that did it. Where are the grandparents? Where were the parents? How? Why? Then we ask ourselves, who brought these people into this world and left them so they act this way?
I practice the Indian way of life, as much as I possibly can, my values that I was raised with. A lot of it is I'm kind of private about it. I think due to the fact that being yourself when I was growing up also meant that there was a lot of fear. You didn't know when you might be taken to jail or might be punished for what you were doing when you were practicing who you were.
For nearly 100 years, Native children were forcibly removed from their homes and forced to attend government or church boarding schools, sometimes thousands of miles from home. All the Indian there is in the race should be dead.
I'm more proud of my grandma because she would, you know, when she first took me to school, she said, everything is new. It's going to be a whole, like going to a different room from what you've been through, what we taught you. But be strong. Don't back off. Be strong. And I didn't know what she was talking about, but I found out because I had braids clear down here to my knees. I had braids, and of course I had my moccasins on, my long dress. And I went in, and they took me to a basement. I wasn't the only one. There was a lot of girls coming in, and they took us down there. And as we passed through the door, we were given, you know, some clothing, a towel, and we went into the bathroom. And the water was there and everything, and I was watching the other girls, and they were, you know, taking their clothes off and getting into the bathtub, so I did that. When I got done, you know, I came out, and I had my clothes on, and they made me go back in, and a nun just pulled them off, and then she made me put what clothes they gave me, and it was a uniform. And when I got done, I thought I was gonna go out, and I thought my grandma was still waiting up there, so I was anxious to get out. But when I came to the door, there was a chair there, and there was a nun standing there. And, you know, they made me sit down, and they put my head back, and they cut my hair clear up here with the bangs. And then they fine-combed with the kerosene, fine-combed my hair. And then after they got done, they put white stuff on it. And then when I was done, you know, I was able to go out, but my grandma wasn't there. I felt bad because you don't just cut your hair anytime you want to. You know, there's certain ways you have to, certain things you have to do, certain time when you can cut your hair. And mine was just chopped off. And that's what, you know, then I understood what she was telling me, to be strong.
Removing children from their culture, language, and traditions resulted in a breakdown of the values and practices that kept women safe. Instead of valuing women as sacred life bearers, schools taught values from a patriarchal culture. The Europeans assumed that one of the reasons Cherokees were uncivilized was because the women had so much power.
The only place I know that women are the weaker sex is in the Black Book. The Bible says women are the weaker sex, and a male monk in the Dark Ages wrote that because he really didn't want to know the truth that women are stronger than men, and that's why. And from then on, from the Dark Ages all the way till now, we've been treated like women are the weaker sex, and they're not. And so when people know that, they say, whoa, you know, and that's why there's disparity in paying women and respecting women's authority and putting women in power positions, because it's still run by the male-dominated part of society. And it goes back to that male monk in the Dark Ages that said women are the weaker sex. And it's time we change that, you know, it's simple.
As Cherokee people began to intermarry with whites and adopt the values of the larger society, women increasingly assumed a secondary role.
When our people were here without that white influence, I think that the women were safe because they were taken care of that way. And I don't think any of that was heard of, you know, child abuse and violence or whatever. You hear stories about things happening, but once they put us on reservations, the men didn't have nothing to do. They said, and then a lot of things start happening, crimes. The alcohol was here, and things happened, and now we have drugs. Just a lot of things are happening. We have a lot of things that the court is dealing with, like women, domestic violence, and all the things that we think that is so terrible is happening.
It was sad to see that it wasn't a stranger that molested these children. It was a relative or a friend in that home. And it was always a home that was very dysfunctional. It was alcohol-related dysfunction in that home. And there was another incident where these boys had married into what they married with these women, but these women already had young children in their homes. They were girls. And so they start molesting them. Well, come to find out, when they were caught and they were doing the investigation, they told the investigator, they said, well, we didn't think we did anything wrong. See, their father was a white man. Their mother was a Lakota woman. They said, you know, we've seen our father do this to our sisters. So to them, that was a way of life in that home. And so they went to prison for that. But because this white man did that to his young daughters, they thought that was a way of life for them. But it wasn't.
As a result of centuries of colonization, the lives of Native American women have changed. These women have gone from having a valued position in their communities to leading lives marked by illness, early death, and domestic violence. Today, we see an increase in alcoholism, divorce, mortality, suicide, depression, health behavior-related illness, oppression and loss of identity, and tribal traditions among American Indian women. Stories from survivors. We are thankful to the elders for their willingness to share their stories of abuse that you are about to hear. Many of our tribal elders have maintained their silence for many years about the abuse they experienced. We consider this as a gift to the people. These may be painful for you to hear, but as you listen, consider why you believe that the elders have decided to share their stories. What are the lessons in the stories? How do these relate to contemporary problems of violence against Native women?
What you're doing is good. I think it needs to come out because people that know me here don't know my life. Hopefully, the kids, the younger kids or whoever watches it might be more aware of what's going on, you know, what could happen. I got pregnant young. I married my baby's father, and we were married for quite a few years there, and I had a lot of children when I was young. The marriage was very not too good. It became very hard for me because my husband was very abusive. He'd beat me up. He'd give me shiners. My face would be swelled up. He always accused me of not being a virgin when he married me, and which I couldn't help because I was sexually abused when I was a little 3-year-old. And when you're 3 years old, you can't defend yourself and don't know what really is happening to you. But that was something. And then he himself sexually abused me, and he was a cousin of mine, and yet he did that, and that's where I had my oldest girl. And then after that, because the parents, the elderly, were saying, you know, uh, you can't do this, you have to get married. And even though I was related to him by law or whatever, that we got married, and after that was just a terrible situation for me all the way around. He'd get drunk, he'd come home. Every time he'd go uptown and didn't come back right away, I'd get nervous. About around noon, around there, I'd start getting nervous, and I knew what was going to happen. And sure enough, when he'd come back, I'd get beat up over any little thing, and I'd have my kids. They were little. I couldn't run from him because my kids were little, and they didn't know. They cried a lot when I got beat up, and so they grew up knowing, being afraid all the time, and that went on for many years.
All of a sudden I see stars where he, and one time we was gonna just go up and see my parents. So we got in, and here, when we got in, I smelled the alcohol. I said, no, I changed my mind, I'm not going. He said, you stay. He held me. And I said, no, I don't wanna go. And he said, no, you're coming. Whether you like it or not, you're coming. I said, no. And we got into, he hit me, so I pushed him away. And he started hitting me. And I had, really long hair. And when I thought I got out, and he grabbed me behind here, and he drugged me. He was running the car, and he was still dragging me. And I was just seeing that wheel go, and I was just flipping over like this, and I was just skinned all over. And where he had my hair, just chunks of it came out. And my brother-in-law, my cousin's house was just a few blocks down, and they seen him dragging me. I was on a pave, and he was dragging me, and I was cut all over. He was dragging me, my clothes were all torn. He was dragging me, and part of it was gravel because I would roll to the side. And when he hit me in the car, I was all, because he was hitting me, he was trying to drive and hit me, and I was trying to get away, and I couldn't. So then they come, and they stopped the car, and they got me up, and then when they got me up, and they pulled me away, he took off. But I was just hurting, burning all over, and so they carried me back to the house, and then she put me in a bedroom, and she wiped me up and everything, but gee, my eyes were just, I couldn't even see. My eyes were swollen shut, my lips were cut, I was swollen, and I was just hurting all over. And so they called the cops, I guess, and they come, and they took pictures, and I was so embarrassed because we were taught to be modest and even have our legs covered, and we had to watch the way we sat. And here I was sitting there in the hatchie. I just had a sheet over me because I couldn't stand anything on my skin. And they come and they had to take pictures. It was so embarrassing. And he took pictures. I was skinned all over. And he took off, and they said it was going to be a federal case. And I said, I don't want nobody to know this. I don't want nobody to see me like this. I don't want nobody to come around. And I said, I want my auntie, my mom's sister. I said, I want her to come. I want to see her.
These two stories represented tens of thousands of Native women who have been battered, raped, and murdered. They survived to share their painful memories with courage and conviction, in the hopes that by breaking the silence, people will take action. Looking forward.
People are beginning to speak out against it because no woman should have to endure that type of treatment, regardless of who the perpetrator is. So I think that people are being more educated that these things aren't supposed to be happening to women, and that we're not going to allow it. I had an uncle, and he was a singer. He sang with the drum group, and my brother and my cousins came back one time from a powwow, and they said, you know what? They said, we sang at this drum group, and we really enjoy it, you know. And here my uncle said, okay now. He said, yeah, it's fun to sing. He said, there's a lot of enjoyment in it. But he said, Iksuya, do you boys remember? He said, when you pick up that drumstick, he said, Hinawakan. He said, what comes out of your mouth is always a prayer. Even if it's a rapid song, it's a happy song, those are prayers. And when you get that drumstick, when you hit that drum's sacred. You don't forget that. He said, don't you ever use that stick to hit anybody. And that goes for your hands. He said, don't ever strike a woman. He said, he said, I consider myself a man. He said, I'm a rodeo man. He said, I break horses. He said, Okahemancho. He sings. But he said, that's one thing. He said, we need chahantash if you're a man. He said, don't ever lay a hand on any woman, your girlfriend, your wife. He said, you do that, he said, you can hurt somebody because, he said, our hands are sacred. Our body is sacred. When you do that to somebody, he said, you injure them. He said, that's not nice. That's not what your hands are for.
Today, you know, because I have a big family, I have 8 boys and 4 girls, I always tell my boys, don't beat on your girlfriends or your wives. Treat your girlfriends the way you would want your sisters and your grandma and your aunts and your mom to be treated. Don't be aggressive in that way sexually. I'll tell my boys. Because it's disgusting, it's embarrassing, and I said it's not a good feeling to have. And I said men are stronger. They can outpower a girl or even a child. I said don't do that. So I just come right out and tell them. I have no fancy words to use to describe the things, but I just tell them like it is.
If we go back to our very basic family kinship system and say, reestablish a family unit saying, this is your little brother, this is your little sister, this is your older sister, your older brother. Because that tells you how you're supposed to relate to each other. Once you establish that, you know, that set the tone on how you dealt with each other.
Apache women are strong, resilient, and continue to make a difference among their tribes.
Whatever I do in life, it is my wife's duty to train me. And I'm supposed to listen down. I'm supposed to listen. Most husbands don't listen. Even though they know their wife's right, they still don't listen. And which is why this discoloration, this imbalance that we have between men and women, and why men perpetrate against women.
I'm happy to say that there's been a revitalization of our culture, our historic culture, and what we're trying to do is bring back the old values that once made our families and our tribes so successful, so healthy and well. And one of those values is, of course, the value of the women of our families. So we're trying to do that, and I think we're becoming successful now. Today is the end of Warrior Camp and Natural Changes Camp. They're held at the same time. And our tribe established those camps for our teenagers at the recommendation or the direction of one of our elders, one of our grandmas. So Natural Changes Camp and Warrior Camp were established as puberty awareness camps, where we made our young men and our young women aware that they were going through a transition from being children to young adults, young men and young women.
Lakota women are very strong, intelligent, they're creative, and they were always very brave-hearted. And because they had to be in decision makings when the men were away. That was their role at that time. And after they put us on reservations, I think that, I'm an advocate for women leadership. And I feel that we still have that strong voice in the decision making of the tribe, what's going to benefit us. And so I think that we were always told that, honey, long time ago, the men and women were equal. There was never any, the men being superior or the women being inferior, because they all did their share of work for the benefit of the camp, the Tioshpa. And I think that that's happening today. We have intelligent women, we have women attorneys, and we've even gone into the medical field. I mean, in every field there is a Lakota woman, And I think that I think this is good for the benefit of our tribes, for the male and female to work on an equal level and standing for the benefit of the people.
How can we incorporate cultural traditions and belief systems into our contemporary response to ending violence against Native women? Ask elders in your community if you can record their memories and stories. Be sure to explain how their stories will be used. Offer compensation and traditional gifts if appropriate. Determine whether traditional ceremonies are appropriate for survivors of violence. Offer but don't require survivors to participate in such ceremonies. Consider adopting a set of qualifications for those who offer healing and support to survivors of violence. Use traditional terms and phrases from your indigenous language in developing materials. Many traditional words do not translate directly into English. Using such language reinvigorates a traditional approach. Develop activities in which children and elders can interact and share their concerns about ending violence. Incorporate traditional skills into the curriculum. In some communities, this is called a culture camp. Consult with elders in the establishment of programs for violent men. Tribal laws should ensure offenders are held accountable for their behavior. There is no excuse for violence.
Yes, there were historic and traditional ways of showing respect and protecting our women from predators, from all other abuses. It was part of the way that we saw our world, and our women had very high status in our world.
The strength and the beauty and the honor of women is before us. When we put that together and begin to honor women as we're supposed to, we're returning to our traditional code of conduct on how we treat women. Pray for women. And every day of my life, as long as I live, I will honor women for all that you are, no matter what. If you think you're unloved and uncared for, don't think that. There is one person that does. That's me. That's where it starts from. That one seed can grow to be that tree. Miigwech.
I think that it would be good if these practices could be incorporated into the work that people are doing when they work with Native women, because Native women are looking for something that says who they are, even though they may not know it. But if it has something to do with Native, they want to do it. And I think that we need to develop some strong leaderships in that area to help women, help other women find those pathways. Like, does that sound about right?
We have power, children. Can any warrior make a child, no matter how brave and wonderful he is?